Tony, it's good to see you.
Hey, nice to see you again as well.
I'm really excited to have you on the podcast. I feel like you have such an incredible story of entrepreneurship and developing your expertise in construction. Something I think a lot of contractors can learn from as we, chat today. But maybe like just right before we get in, tell us a little bit more about yourself. How would you introduce yourself to the listeners? Tell us a little bit more about how you got into construction, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I grew up on the Jersey Shore as a young kid. It was 4 months of Harry and 8 months of worry. So I kind of grew up in this entrepreneurial world as a kid. My father was a cop and he had like multiple businesses and kind of started out and then got into the restaurant business at 15. And then when I opened that restaurant owner had me in construction. Every time something would break in the restaurant business, you end up repairing it yourself because you can't afford it in the restaurant business. So kind of got introduced to that. My dad was in construction when I was a kid. So it was kind of natural for me. So when I started building restaurants, I just became the GC and started building all my own restaurants, all the interior build out, tile, stone, building from the ground up. So, and then it went in from there to customers asking me, hey, I need a plumber, I need an electrician. So eventually I just started sending subs out and then I'm like, I'm not, and then they're coming back and complaining. And I'm like, oh, this isn't going to work. So I just started my own construction company and went from there.
So it sounds like you, I don't want to say accidentally found your way in, but you were pulled into all of a sudden having a construction company off of that experience, just, doing things here and there, right? Maintenance and repair, so to speak, at the restaurant. Is that a good way to describe it?
Yeah, I just started out with small, like, hey, I need help with my bathroom. I need help with this. And then I got into ICF construction, which is insulated concrete forms, which is concrete homes. And so that's really my niche. I mean, I build everything. I build stick frame. I build concrete. I do almost anything. Anything from the dirt to the roof is what I do.
And so how long ago has that been now? How long have you been in the industry now?
I've been building for 30 years. I mean, it's been a long time. So, really ramped it up probably 12, 15 years ago. Really started cranking it up. And it's actually bigger than all my other businesses now.
That's amazing. So how many projects, I guess, would you say you do roughly per year these days?
I mean, like right now we have 25 jobs going currently. So, I mean, we'll do 100 jobs, 75 to 100 a year.
Wow.
It's a mixture of like I've got like three commercial jobs going, a bunch of remodels going. I have three big homes that I'm working on right now. So very diversified across multiple avenues of business because cash flow is always, the remodeling is great for cash flow, where some of the long-term big builds, you're on a bank draw. It takes forever to get paid. And so the really helps a lot with your overhead. Like my overhead runs about 20%. So the remodels really help supplement that. And then my custom homes become almost 100% profit because my overhead's paid by the remodeling piece.
Oh, that's amazing. You do, I think, have a very keen understanding for how a business is run and for how to make money in the business, which I think is a skill that probably comes with experience of actually being, on the inside for a very long time, right? And sort of learning from actually like what it's like to be in the business day to day and worrying about things like margins and profit and efficiency. I'd love to get into that as well. But it sounds like in addition to your main job, right, which is running your construction company, you also have been very active in terms of education and speaking with other contractors. I think when you and I met at NHB, you just came off of a speaker session, right, where you spoke to a lot of
Right.
contractors there. Tell me a little bit about that part of your life as well. Like, what is, I guess, why is that something that you are carving out time for? From I'm sure your already very busy schedule, and when you speak with contractors, what type of topics do you tend to speak about?
I founded over 30 companies in my life, and I got to a point where I'm like, I was coming home every day to my wife. I'm like, what is the purpose of my life? What am I doing? And I went to a university and I taught a semester I took 25 kids and taught an entrepreneurial class. And I brought them to one of my restaurants and we did business plans and stuff like this. And I came home after the very first class and I told my wife I was put on this earth to teach and inspire people. And from that point on, I started my speaking career, my coaching. So I've been coaching for over 25 years. And then my book is the Business Scaling Blueprint, which I wrote a book. And my book is written like a textbook for entrepreneurs where they can go through every process. There's 8 different chapters. And they can actually, if they're having trouble with delegation or they're having trouble with marketing or training, you can turn right to a specific chapter and learn that piece. So my whole purpose is now, and my whole next future of my life is going to be really inspiring and teaching people how to win. It's so sad in the construction industry, especially, there's such a high failure rate. And it's because, if you're a framer, you're saying like, hey, I'm not paying that GC. I'm going to make all that money myself. And they think it's easy. They don't understand the business side of it and how to run numbers. And you had asked a question earlier about numbers. And the biggest thing when you run a restaurant, I mean, we're in the penny business, where in construction, you're in the dollar business. So, I had a very huge advantage with growing up in the restaurant industry and having to learn that industry and making sure, like, I know how much, the paper towel machines that come out of the paper towel in the bathroom. Well, I know how much a foot of paper towels cost. So that translated into construction, where I see a 2x4 laying on the ground. I'm like, hey, knock those nails out. Use that 2x4. Like, it just gives you a different perspective on waste and margin. And I make money when I do estimates. That's when I make my money. It's not when I finish the job. How good is that estimate being done properly? So many contractors lose money through that process of purchasing. And then a customer says, oh, can you do this? And they say, oh, no problem. They start doing things, and it just starts eating margin constantly throughout the entire job. So a big thing for me, and one thing I love about Handoff, is that, like, when we look at margin in the beginning, I always test my projects at the end of the project. Where's my margin at? And I put a 3% buffer in there always when I do a bid, just to make sure I have a little bit of a buffer.
What are some of the common mistakes you see that contractors make when they try to think about margin or markup? I think as some folks try to focus on. Maybe walk me through what you saw there.
Like, I asked the people on stage, I'm like, how many people charge a markup versus a margin? And I mean, almost the entire, there was 400 people in the crowd. Almost the entire, like 20% of the people understood what margin was. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys, do you realize how much money? And there's an old man sitting in the front row just laughing. And I'm like, what are you laughing about? And he goes, I did that for 25 years. He goes, I can only laugh about it now because how much money I lost, because you tell a customer you're 25% margin, all they hear is 25%. But then if you have to educate them on that afterwards, 25% margin is divided by 0.75. But now your markup's 0.7, your markup 75%, right? So, and it works. And the thing is I would love to teach more young contractors this, because that will make the difference of them being profitable and not profitable. It's really a huge deal.
So if a young contractor out there, or a contractor that's scaling their business, is listening to this right now, and they're trying to figure out, well, how do I make more money, or how do I not lose money? How would you explain that difference between markup and margin to them in basic terms, so they can go and apply that in their company, tomorrow, this week?
So instead of multiplying by 0.25, so if it's a $50,000 job, they multiply it by 0.25. In margin, you divide it by 0.75, which is actually almost 30%. It's 30%. Where when you're multiplying by 0.25, it's actually 21%. So you're losing 4 to 5%, or you're gaining 4 to 5% on the other side. And that's the biggest difference. So you take 5%, if your overhead is, say, 10%, and you're giving away 5% every single job, there's no way you're making money. I mean, our margins are decent in construction, but they're not that good. So it's really a matter of understanding. It's very simple. And the beauty of AI today, if you want to learn how to do this, just go on AI and say, what is markup versus margin? And it'll help you calculate it. Say, okay, what is margin on $100,000? What's margin on, or percentage of profit on $100,000 in markup? And that's really what they need to do. But the nice part, like, and if you're using Handoff, if these are clients that are watching this, I mean, like, when I first started with Handoff, I was like, I had to keep forcing margin. Like, no, I want margin. Like, so I mean, it's very, very important. But where most people, they lose that margin, is the biggest killer in construction for margin is Home Depot and Lowe's. And one of my favorite things, the very first time I used Handoff, was I said, I need 5 tubes of caulk. I'm like, yes, because that's always something that, like, you don't realize. My wife, if she was on this podcast with us, she would be like, oh my God, I hate Home Depot and Lowe's, because we inundate her with like receipts and like stuff like that. But I'll tell you, the beauty of when you're estimating with like Handoff, has been great. I don't have to worry about those Lowe's runs, because that Simpson bracket, or, you have how many boxes of nails, everything's in there. And it's really been great for me. And just teaching it to other people,
So it,
especially my young project managers. Now they're starting to use it themselves. I just had a project manager do the Gantt chart for the first time, and she was so excited, and it was just really cool.
that's amazing. That's so great to hear. So it sounds like we're so in addition to kind of thinking differently about, how do you multiply, your input cost by, that markup or margin number that you're trying to optimize for. So first of all, don't multiply by that 0.25 or 25%, right? Divide by that number instead, right? And so
Divide
like
by
that
0.75. So it's the opposite, right? So take divided by the opposite, right?
exactly, divide by the opposite, so that because that will give you a more accurate representation. And also, it sounds like when you are thinking about what goes in the job, don't forget those consumables, right? Those like caulking, nails, right? Tape, like all of the things that you're going to need, but they just kind of like these little paper cuts, they add up at the end of the day, and then they become, it can be a substantial number of what that total job is.
Yeah, when you're building, say a 3,000 square foot house, I mean, you're talking about a lot of glue, a lot of blue tape. Blue tape is so expensive. It's a lot of these things. But like, what's nice now, like even like in your contracting, like the price of PVC has gone up 30%. Well, you have a bid from 2 months ago from a plumber. It's gone up 30% in the last 2 weeks. Are you paying attention to that as a general contractor or a contractor? How well do you know your numbers? How well are you watching the environment right now? Like I'm constantly asking my suppliers about tariffs, about what we're doing, the price of oil right now. Now, from being in the restaurant industry, I know anytime that price of oil goes up, it affects everything in my business. It does as well in the construction industry because it's freight, it's all this stuff. Those bids that you did 2 months ago are not going to be good enough today.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's not only the impact on the construction material prices we are seeing as well, prices are going up. Handoff does provide that real-time pricing information about, what things cost at different suppliers. But also we're seeing obviously direct hit to your margin from the fuel cost, right? So if you're driving a
Right.
truck around all day, like it's now, can be like substantially more expensive to actually pay for that fuel. And that you have to think about that when you think about your margins as well.
Right, your overhead's going up. I mean, I have 5 people on my fleet fuel. I mean, and it's just I drive an F-350 diesel, so it's costing me $100 extra a week. But where are you just absorbing that cost as a general contractor? But that's not how business works. If you keep doing that, you'll be out of business, and you'll be like, why can't I afford my bills? And another piece that you just made me think of is money out on the street. Those progress payments are critically important. It's something we use as well, making sure that those progress payments are linked to every event that's happening. So if it's material, if it's whatever it is, all of your rough ends, making sure you're collecting this. I can't tell you how many contractors that I coach that I'm sitting there like, yeah, we have $300,000 on the street. We can't make payroll. I'm like, well, your system's broken on collecting money and what you're doing, your progress. Put more draws into your schedule. So I'm used to bigger construction projects where I'm dealing with bank draws constantly. So if you don't have that experience of dealing with bank draws, you've got to take that as a smaller contractor and use the same process.
That's right. Yeah, the whole draw experience, right, is something that I think you can only understand once you've done it a few times because it can be quite complex, right? And like, where's the money getting deposited, right? Who's holding it in escrow? Like, what are the milestones you need to demonstrate? There are platforms that you have to learn when you deal with draws as well. But let's talk about the world of AI as well. So it sounds like, and I really love that because, we work with all kinds of different customers. Some are brand new and they're coming into Handoff and they're like, I already use AI and I'm not going to, I'm starting a business. I'm not going to start a business without AI, right? And there are
Great.
other folks who are more experienced and they have done things a certain way. And they are like, I don't know if I'm ready for, changing what I currently do. But it sounds like you are in the category where you have been doing this for a long time. I'm sure, you can probably do a lot of, what it takes to run a construction business in the back of your head, right? At the same time, it feels like, you are embracing AI and you've been an early customer of Handoff. Just tell me about that a little bit more. Like why AI is something that you find is useful, and how are you thinking about how AI influences your business?
Yeah, I'm kind of that person that always needs to be learning something. So if there's a better way to do it, I'm looking for it. I'm driving myself crazy to find a better system, process, solution. So I am a very solution-minded person. So when I'm on stage or I'm in my meeting this morning, I'm like told my entire management staff, I'm like, what's a problem? And every single person goes, the problem's an opportunity. So like, and then I'm like, what opportunities create? Opportunities create solutions. So my brain functions in a solution mindset. So I'm looking at AI, and this is hell 3 years ago. I'm looking at AI. I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is going to be amazing. Well, as soon as ChatGPT came out, like I think the first week, I had it downloaded on my phone. I'm like, this is awesome. Like, I love it. But for me, I'm putting it in every single business. Right now, I'm working with a virtual assistant company, and we're putting AI agents in companies that now, instead of having 5 VAs in the company, we have 1 VA that's an AI agent that's a live person. And what they're doing is they're doing every single aspect in the company. So AI is an amazing tool. And the biggest thing I told all those contractors sitting in that room, I said, how many people here are using AI? And again, 15% of the audience raised their hand. I'm like, I'm so glad none of you are using AI, because I'm going to beat every one of you. I said, construction will be one of the last industries that's taken over by AI. But if you're not using AI in your construction company today, you are going to lose every single day. Because I am in the driveway now with Handoff. I'm giving the customer the bid within 30 minutes of me leaving the driveway. I'm actually doing the bid in the driveway, and then I don't want to act like I'm doing it so quick that I'm not paying attention to details, but I usually like wait about 30 minutes and then send them the bid.
So you have to actually make it make it look slower.
Exactly. Yeah, my daughter is my interior designer, and like she does everything with her computer, and she's so fast now with her designs, and she'll wait a week to send them the design,
That's
but she has it
amazing.
done in an hour.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's
But
so that's
AI,
so
if
interesting.
you're not, my biggest thing, I guess, is if you're not embracing AI as a tool. I tell contractors all the time, I'm like, 20 years ago, there were no nail guns, 25 years ago, whatever it was. Everybody was using a hammer. My dad used a hammer to frame houses. That's what he used. All of a sudden, the nail gun comes out, and everybody's like, oh, there's not going to be any more framers anymore. And now there's just more framers. So it's just a tool that's, I think, will some people lose their jobs, some of the data analysis, but what's going to happen with AI? We're going to have a huge unemployment problem with AI over the next 5 to 10 years. And then the AI economy is going to come roaring back better than it's ever been. And that's where I truly believe. I mean, I've talked to professors at Wharton University about this and what they think. So if that's the same alignment they're saying, there's going to be a lot of disruption right now, but you need to adapt AI. If you're in the construction industry, you will lose market share if you're not in AI and efficiencies. And the biggest thing, are you going to still be able to build and do construction? For sure. But I'm going to be so much more efficient and more profitable that I'll win more jobs because I'll be able to do it at different margins than you.
And it feels like it is different for different industries. And I think where construction and especially for residential construction and owners of those construction companies, it isn't like, you're running a staff of thousands of people and all of a sudden you're
Uh,
like, no, I'm just going to replace that with AI. It's more like you're running a company, by yourself, maybe with a couple of people doing, 10 different jobs, which is, that's you and, being the owner.
right.
And then it feels like with the companies that we work with who are adapting AI and using Handoff, they are supplementing the fact that they just don't have enough hours in a day to do everything they need in order to run their construction company. So it wasn't, from what we hear, at least with the folks who own businesses in this space, it's less about, oh, let me go and just replace a bunch of headcount. It's like, no, let me bring in headcount that I can never hire otherwise, either because they're just not available or because it's too expensive.
Right. They can't afford it. Right. So that's a big thing that AI is helping. Like I'll ask people like, why haven't you hired this person? Why haven't you hired this person? And they're like, well, we can't afford it. Well, now I bring in AI as a solution and they're getting the same work done. They're working less. So I have a founder that I'm coaching right now, and I've delegated and used AI in his business. And he's like, yeah, he goes, I don't know what to do at 2 o'clock in the afternoon anymore. I'm like, go grow business, go grow your business. And I said, if not, grow your business. So for me, scaling isn't necessarily growing your business, but scaling is also personal time, right? So some people want to just drive every day and grow their business to, $100 million. And some people want to keep their business at $3-4 million and have a better life with their family. That's the same thing. Scaling is being with your family or scaling, growing your business. It doesn't matter to me as long as we know what that goal is and you can grow. But AI will give you that opportunity to enhance your business. So if I brought AI into a construction company and they were doing $1 million a year, and all of a sudden I bring AI in to make them more efficient, and they're doing 5 million a year, I guarantee you they're going to hire more people. I'm going to have more PMs out there. I'm going to have another probably person on procurement. So all of a sudden AI, because I brought AI in at $1 million, now I'm doing 5 million. I didn't lose employees. I just gained employees. And that's the piece people are missing.
That's right, right? You still need somebody who's going to be there in a field, right? Actually managing the job. You still need somebody who can, actually do your purchasing for you, right? AI can help to automate certain tasks, but there are just certain aspects of what a construction company needs that are just not replaceable at the moment, right? And if you're doing all of a sudden more projects or larger projects, because you became more efficient, because you're estimating more, you will have to go, and it's going to be a good problem to have, right? You will have to go and hire that an extra project manager to be on site for you, right? It is just something that will have to come with that scaling process. But let's talk about scaling a little bit more. Sometimes I hear of companies that are scaling and they are saying, well, I'm just going to grow my revenue now. And, I'm doing 500K right now. I want to do 2 million, let's say, by the end of next year. And then they end up doing that and then end up losing money. How is that possible? How does that even happen?
Well, a lot of things, what happens is they don't have the proper systems in place to scale, right? So one of the things is identifying, right? If my gap is 500,000 to 2 million, I need to take a step back and reverse engineer what does 2 million look like? And at what stage are you hiring people? So some people are going crazy and go rogue and just say, oh my God, I want to do 2 million a year. And they hire 4 or 5 people and now their overhead's through the roof. One of the biggest problems when you scale it, like you'll hear people scaling all the time. I made more money when I was doing $1 million versus doing 10 million. I made more money. But what happened is the only thing that didn't change is the owner was just working twice as hard, doing 10 million a year. And the problem is they have a huge trust issue. One of the biggest problems with entrepreneurs and leaders, they have a huge trust issue. They don't trust anybody. So delegation now becomes a huge issue. Handoff is the delegation tool. I mean, gosh, that's what it is. And it's just like having an employee for me. I'm delegating my estimate to them. Even though I'm putting the prompting in, I'm delegating. And what happens is when those founders get to $10 million, they're overwhelmed. They're stressed out. They're not making money. There's problems going on every job. They're missing steps. They can't get things done. And the projects are typically taking longer. Now they're really losing money. If you can't get in and out of a kitchen remodel in 6 weeks, then you haven't done your pre-homework. I remodel a custom kitchen in 6 weeks, but the second I demo that job, everything is lined up 100% for me. But if it takes me 6 months to get out of that kitchen, I've lost money completely. And that's what starts to happen. As you scale, you have to scale your internal people as well. You have to invest in people and processes to be able to scale efficiently. It doesn't mean anything if you're doing $10 million and losing money.
How does AI would be a factor in something like this? So maybe give us some concrete examples of how you're using Handoff to help with that scaling process, or how you recommend other contractors use Handoff to scale their own companies. Like, give us just a couple of specific ways that they can do it today.
Yeah. So as far as scaling for me, it's right. It's obviously there's multiple levels of scaling, right? So it's definitely understanding your brand that you work for, systemizing your systems, not being afraid to delegate properly, doing proper marketing. What does your lead gen look like? Who is your customer avatar to? A lot of people waste money on marketing. They're marketing to not their niche, right? When I say customer avatar, I'm saying my customer avatar is high-end kitchens and high-end remodels, not the 5x7 hall bathroom or the little driveway. That's not my niche. So I don't market that. But when people do blanket marketing, they end up losing money. So if you're trying to scale, it's having all of these processes and procedures in place, but it's then using, like I said, if you want to scale and make money, you need a tool like Handoff. You need Gantt charts, right? How am I scheduling my projects to make sure? Know the margin that you're going into when you begin a project, and making sure, are you assessing at the end of a project? I guarantee you 98% of everybody that's watching this does not follow that process where they go in and say, hey, I'm going to make 35% of margin on this. 98% of them don't look at it at the end of the job and say, did I hit my 35% margin? And if you didn't hit your 35% margin, what systems and processes broke down in the meantime? So if you want to scale, start scaling with one job and see that process all the way through on one job, and how efficient were you in that one job. Now you're ready to take the next job. So scaling doesn't need to be, I don't go from 500,000 to 5 million. I want you to scale each individual job like it's your only business. That is a business. So imagine opening 50 restaurants. So take all 50 of your construction jobs and actually do your P&L on each single job and know where your numbers are. The biggest thing with scaling is knowing your numbers, and your tool with Handoff, that definitely helps that immensely.
That's really interesting. Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit more. So you're saying that treat every construction project as if it's its own P&L line, as if it's its own micro business underneath your business, right? Help me understand, well, how does that look like in practice? So, I'm a contractor. I made an estimate. I bid the job. I won the job. I go out there. I go ahead and complete the project. Well, how do I know, if I'm making money on this? Like, how do you actually like operationalize the process of doing what you just described? Like, so that at the end of the day, I can look at this and see, like, did I make some money on this? Did I not make some money on this? How does it actually look like in practice?
So I'm very excited about your financial piece coming out in summer. So which I have, so we use other softwares that actually track our margin throughout the entire process. So when our project managers come in, they're putting receipts in for Home Depot, Lowe's, everything. So I can actually tell whether or not I'm on margin or not all the way through the project. But what I'm talking about in the P&L, so say your overhead's 20% and you've got 5 jobs going on. What percentage, if I divided that by 5, right? I'm looking at 4% of whatever it is, I'm allocating that to this job. So I'm making sure I'm putting my margin everywhere it goes, fuel, trucks, cost, everything into that single job. So it's one thing to say, okay, I'm going to make 35% on this job. But at the end of it, if I didn't add my overhead in, my fuel, all my expenses, my insurance, a huge builder's risk, all of that, I want you to treat every single job as if it was a business before you scale. Take one job as an example and run that one job like it's a business. Now, it's easy to say you had $1 million job and that's all you can do capacity, you're going to have those numbers. But the thing is, most contractors don't have $1 million jobs, right? So if you took a $200,000 or $100,000 job and ran that like it was the only thing you had, know what that margin is from the beginning of the estimate all the way through to the end. Now you're ready to scale, because if you can do it efficiently with 1 job, 2 jobs, 3 jobs, 4 jobs, now you can say, man, if I take 10 jobs, I'm going to run this exact process and system throughout every single job I do. And that's when you're ready to scale. But if you don't know your numbers, you shouldn't be talking scaling right now.
Gotcha. So you take your initial estimate that becomes your budget, and as you go through the job, you say collect these receipts, right, and make sure that those receipts connect back to that budget, right? Maybe against some cost accounting rules, and just constantly track the profitability on that job, so that you know where you are at any given point in time. But not only do that with your receipts, also do that with your overhead, right? And try to calculate how much you're expending on fuel and maybe even office costs. And would you work in the marketing cost as well into that job, or is that so
I
everything
want you to
really?
take every expense that you have. So say I'm spending $1,000 a month on marketing. I'm going to divide that by 5 jobs I have going on. I'm going to divide
Mhm.
every single aspect. My insurance costs, I'm going to divide it by 5 jobs. And this seems like a daunting process, but if you really want to grow your business, you have to know these numbers. You have to. I
Yeah,
mean,
otherwise,
I've ran
how do you know if you're
restaurants.
making any money?
Yeah, I've ran 8 restaurants at one time. Every single restaurant had their own P&L, every single one. And then every single month, we would sit down and compare each restaurant to each other. So this is where I learned this process, but now I take it to construction as well. And so many contractors don't do this. They're like, oh, I lost money on this job money, but I'm going to make it up on this one. You hear it all the time in construction. And the biggest thing is at Home Depot, if I come back to my office with a $500 Home Depot receipt, you need to look at your estimate and say, did I have that where's that $500 at? I want to see where that's at, right?
That's
Like
right.
right now,
No.
today, an hour ago, I just got a bid on Handoff, right? For decking, railings, everything. And my labor number in Handoff was 15,000. I got a bid for 22,000. So what do you do now? I'm going back to my contractor and I'm going to say, hey, I had $15,000 in labor on this bid. What can you do for me? Or explain to me why there's a difference, and then I can adjust my price. If there was something that I missed that was custom or a custom framing or something that I missed, I can go back to my client and say, hey, due to the fact of the roof condition, we're going to have to actually do some more framing.
Use that number to negotiate, right, against your subs. You don't have to go and just accept the bid that they gave you, but you can say, hey, this is what I had before. Tell me why what you have is different, and how do we work together to just make sure that this works for both
And you can
parties.
blame Handoff.
Fair enough.
Blame Handoff. Yeah, my
Fair enough.
estimating tool. This is what our estimate. This is the standard for our area of Virginia Beach where I'm living, and this is what the going cost for labor. Can you justify why you're $7,000 more?
A lot of our customers actually, what they do is they would do the entire estimate and handoff, and then they give the estimate to their sub, and then they just say, "Here's the number that I need you to hit,"
Yep.
and they kind of call it a day. Don't even wait for them to give the bid. That's what I was just talking to a contractor who's doing that too.
Yeah, putting
Um,
an RFP out. Do you, like that would be, I don't know if you're doing that in the future, but being able to send RFPs out, like, you know what I mean? So if you do a bid for a deck and say, I can send it to 5 different subs.
it's just between you and I. Small secret is it's coming actually later this summer. We'll have a subcontractor management portal as well, so you'll be able to do that too.
Yeah,
Um,
so I work with a big realty company. They have 700 doors, and we have, like, 150 subcontractors that work on all these. And we basically send RFPs out and say, hey, we have to replace a toilet. So we'll send it to 8 plumbers. And because, if I have a plumber today, he's not busy, he'll do it for $200. The other guy wants 400.
yeah, and maybe even, try to bid level where possible, right? And then compare and contrast. AI can really simplify a lot of these processes too, like not having to reconcile everything in a spreadsheet. So sounds like if I try to recap your playbook for scaling, right, is first of all, start at an individual job level, right? Figure out what is your niche, right? Let's say if
Right.
it's a certain project type, a bathroom type, right, a new construction type, and then use that as its own profit and loss sort of analysis and understand on this type of job, like how am I pricing it out? Where's my money going? Use that as essentially as, I don't know, want to call it like a prototype job, right? And then
Yeah.
use that as
Good
something that you
template.
can then, exactly, and then something that you can then scale. And when you go out to market and you run ads or you get leads, make sure that that marketing budget is spent on bringing more jobs like that, right? That you are feeling comfortable that you can make money on. And then as you are adding those in, continue to monitor your expenses and making sure that you are staying profitable, but do not forget about your overhead, your office expenses, your staff expenses, your marketing, right? Just take that full expense line and then divide that by the number of jobs that you are running. And
Right.
then potentially, as you are adding more jobs, like that in relative terms could even go down, right? You're not going to need more office space,
No.
presumably, right?
Right.
So,
Right. You're
so that
efficient. That's efficiencies of scale, right? So I'm like, is that one person doing procurement? How much procurement can she do? If you're doing $1 million a year, at what level do you need to hire another person for procurement? She might be able to do $3 million worth of business, one person. And this is where you start scaling. People ask me all the time, when do you hire an employee? You hire an employee when your capacity is at 100% or 80%, 85%. That's when I start looking for that next employee.
her advice that I heard is don't hire until it becomes so painful that he
That's
basically
why I
can't.
reversed. That's why I reversed from 100% to 85. I want to be a little nice. My biggest thing is really just taking the time. When we talk about avatars, it's really knowing your avatar, but there's another piece to avatar that everybody needs to understand, your subcontractor avatar. So if I have an avatar, say every $100,000 remodel in kitchens, right? I can't put an employee, a subcontractor avatar that's used to doing $20,000 to $40,000 kitchens. I need the right subcontractor. So my subcontractors are all leveled out. So I have 5 electricians. I have a level 2 to a level 5 electrician. I don't hire level ones. So level 2 to a level 5. So I know exactly what level electrician needs to go into a job based on the value of the house before they even start. Or if it's an apartment that I can send in, I can send a level 2 electrician in. Hey, he's got to go change out a couple lights, couple of receptacles, no big deal. Custom home, I'm sending a level 5 electrician. So a good thing to understand is once you figure out your avatar for your company, right? Hey, I want a mid-range $700,000 homes and up remodels. I need to have the right subcontractor avatar for that as well. I mean, that
Mhm.
might be a little high level, but that's pretty deep. So
No, that makes perfect sense, right? If you are scaling, right, that means that you need to have people that can help you do more projects,
right.
and you want to make sure it's a consistent type of input right into those projects, so that ideally that those jobs stay profitable and your customers stay happy, right? Because if you start grabbing every subcontractor you can find in order to do the next job, then odds are, you're going to be in trouble. And then all of a sudden, the whole machinery breaks, right? And you can't really now you have to go and put out, maybe even literal fires, right, on that job
Oh yeah.
because of the wrong partner that you ended up assigning to that project.
And I don't look at my subcontractors as a partner. They're my employees, right? So like when they're on that job, they're representing me. So I make sure my subcontractors are in uniform, no profanity, no drinking on the job, no cigarettes. These, even though they have a boss, I command that level of expertise every time on my job and make sure of that. But it's so important that we understand that avatar piece, the employee avatar and your customer avatar. When I say employee, I mean subcontractors. And so many people, like so many contractors, I can guarantee you we get 5 or 6 of them on. I'm like, how many employees do you have? They'll tell you they have 3. I'm like, well, how many subs do you have out on the field right now? And how many of those employees are on the field? And they're like, oh, there's like 50 people working on my jobs. And I'm like, you have 50 employees. But they don't look at it that way. And I look at it that way because that employee represents me. If the owner walks into one of those houses and he's got profanity, or he doesn't have his shirt tucked in, or he's not in uniform and he looks like a slob, that's a reflection of me. So he is my employee. And that's how I look at it every day.
Yeah, and there's a real problem in construction that I think psychologists and economists.
Opportunity.
That's right. There's a real opportunity if you can approach it in the right way. And I really love that mindset. I think if you're somebody listening to this and you're building a business, and if you don't love problems, then you're not really building a business, right? Building a business is just solving a bunch of problems over and over. That's pretty much what it is. But those problems become opportunities because once you solve them, well, now ideally your company is better, right? Your project is now doing better. You're making more money.
Right.
And it sounds like, with the subcontractors, there's this nature of I think what I heard is something called agency problem, right? If you are not the owner of the work product, right? If you are, essentially like for hire, you may not feel that what you're doing is as valuable, as important. So at the end of the day, you deliver results that are not as good in terms of quality. Like I'm sure if you went outside and, you started laying down tile, you probably do the best damn job you can possibly do because that's, your project. But if you hire somebody and if they're not somebody who is on your payroll directly, you don't view them as your employee, that person doesn't view themselves as your employee, then that agency problem, that agency gap becomes bigger. And so the quality of what they will deliver is going to be worse and worse. And it sounds like you found this really incredible way to address that by saying, hey, subcontractor, I know it's, maybe not as conventional, but if you're working for me, here's a checklist of what I need you to do. And I'm presuming that a lot of subs that you tell that to, they probably tell you like, oh, there's no way we're going to work together. Just forget about it. And that's probably a good thing because then you end up screening out the folks who are not a good fit for your business to begin with.
So the beauty of having set level training, level subcontractors. So my level contractors, right? So if I send a level 2 plumber to an apartment, he's got to change out. I can easily set an expectation for the owner of the plumbing company because I know he's a level 2. So I've also set an expectation for myself. I can't expect a level 2 plumber to be a level 5, but it's my job to send the right plumber to the right job. If I have a custom home, I'm building a huge home right now, it's 15,000 square feet. I cannot send a level 2 plumber, a level 2 electrician. I have to send a level 5 electrician because the homeowner is spending a lot more money and they expect a level of service. So it's critically important to know that. So do I have level 2 plumbers and level 2 electricians? 100%. But it's my job as the owner of the company to set the proper expectation, set the expectation of the employees. So when I go to a subcontractor, I say, this is my expectation. I want everybody in uniform. Like I said, I don't want anybody smoking, no profanity. Don't write profanity on my studs, which happens all the time, right? And so like I make sure I set those expectations that we're working in somebody's home, not their house. So it's critically important. I use that term all the time. I'm working on your home, not your house. And just changing that mindset, how we think every single day.
That's amazing. I feel like this can be a whole other session that we can spend time on and unpack of like the details of how you do this. But for is kind of running up on time now for the folks listening, it sounds like there is a lot that people can learn from you. What can they do in order to maybe, I think you mentioned your book, how they can read your book, where they can find your book. What are some of the sessions maybe they can attend?
Sure.
Tell us about maybe any social media presence that they can follow you through. Because I think for a lot of folks listening out there, just having you as their virtual, so to speak, mentor, where they can just learn, about some of those things that you are trying to teach would be really a game changer to the quality of the business they're building.
There's no doubt. The one thing I love to do is jump on the phone with an entrepreneur 15 minutes. I don't care. I'll take 100 calls a week. It doesn't matter to me. I just love talking to people. You can go to my website, TonyDiSilvestro.com. There's a lot of speaking there, and that's my speaking site. And I don't know if we can put a link in the show. That would be great. And then the Business Scaling Blueprint is my book. You can get it anywhere online. But my favorite thing is, somebody's got a burning question. I love it. I'm getting ready to start a live Q&A day. I'll let you know when that lands too, so that people can just jump on anytime they want and do some Q&A with me. But I would love to. I mean, I've coached a lot of people in construction, so it's obviously my passion. So I love working with construction entrepreneurs and bigger businesses. I'm working with some really big $200 million businesses in construction, but custom homes, and I work with remodelers all over the place, big remodeling companies. But, unfortunately in business, and this is where people need to reach out if they are stuck or they're lost, just reach out to me, because entrepreneurship is the loneliest profession in the world. And the problem is we're so afraid to talk to somebody else and be able to say vulnerable to saying, man, I'm losing business, I'm losing money, how can I do this? And that's the beauty of why I love helping other entrepreneurs out there, and especially in construction.
That's amazing. We'll make sure to leave the links to your website and your book and make sure that folks can follow on with your Q&A sessions. I feel like it's such an incredible opportunity for people to be able to sort of step out and understand how their business should be run. Learn from some of your incredible frameworks. And then I guess maybe the closing thing here is we talked about AI a lot. So for folks out there who are thinking about introducing AI, maybe just dipping their toe in the water or thinking about Handoff, what would you recommend for them using AI as a tool to put into their business if they're still hesitant, they're still learning about it right now?
Handoff is so easy. I mean, to be honest with you, it's one of the easiest tools I've ever used versus like say a job tread or something like this. It's so much material. Where Handoff, I think they called me and I called them, and like within an hour, I think I did an estimate like right on the phone. It was really cool. I think that's an easy entry into AI. I think then you get into AI and you get into HR, sales, marketing, stuff like that. I would start off with the estimating, because it's really the purest piece of your construction business is the estimating piece. I said this in the beginning, we make money when we write the estimate. That's when you make money in the construction industry. So if there was anything I was going to invest in AI right now, it would be Handoff and the estimating tool. I just think it's unbelievable and it's so easy to use.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much for being a customer of ours. Thank you so much for sharing all this advice with contractors. We'd love to have you on the show again. I feel like, I feel like we just scratched the surface here. There's so much more to unpack. But, for folks who just started listening and, kind of really enjoyed hearing what Tony had to say here, make sure you buy his book. It feels like it's going to be a no-brainer. It'll provide a lot of ROI for you and your company right off the bat. Tony, thank you so much. And, I hope to see you here again.
My pleasure. I really enjoyed speaking with everybody, and hello to everyone that listened to it. So thank you.
Thank you.